I'm Morgan Bailey, 33 years old, and I never expected to stand frozen before 60 relatives as my father publicly declared I was no longer his daughter. Not because I'd committed a crime or hurt someone, but because I'd chosen my own path. The shock on his face minutes later when his boss recognized me was something I'll never forget. The irony was perfect, being rejected for my career choices only to be revealed as his new boss. Before I tell you how I went from family outcast to watching my father's jaw drop, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe if you want more stories about finding success against all odds. Growing up as Robert Bailey's daughter meant living under a microscope of expectations. From my earliest memories, my father was a man of unbending principles and traditional values. He worked in middle management at Reynolds Enterprise, a position he'd held for 25 years with minimal advancement but unwavering loyalty. Every dinner conversation revolved around the importance of stability, following established paths, and the sacred Bailey family tradition. Business school followed by joining the family insurance agency his grandfather had founded. The Bailey name means something in this town, he would remind us, fork pointed emphatically across the dinner table. For generations of steady, respectable business. No flashy startups, no risky ventures, just solid, dependable service. My mother, Catherine, was a study in quiet resignation. When my father's criticisms became too harsh, she would find me later, usually in my bedroom where I'd retreated to nurse my wounded pride. "Your father means well," she would say, smoothing my hair. "He just wants security for you." His father was tough on him too. These moments of tenderness were always private, never contradicting Robert directly. In family meetings, her votes aligned with his, her opinions echoed his sentiments. Yet sometimes, when we were alone, she would slip me articles about women entrepreneurs or books about forging new paths. "Just to broaden your horizons," she'd say with a small smile that hinted at dreams she herself had set aside. My brother Ethan embraced our father's vision completely. 3 years older than me, he followed every step of the Bailey planned perfectly business school at our father's alma mater, summer internships at the family agency, joining as junior partner upon graduation. His adherence earned him the position of golden child, his achievements celebrated while mine were scrutinized for flaws. See how Ethan closed the Henderson account. My father would beam at Sunday dinners. That's the Bailey touch, understanding what people really need, not what some computer algorithm says they want. My sister Amanda, 2 years younger than me, found her own form of rebellion. She dyed her hair purple in high school, dated musicians our father disapproved of, but ultimately stayed close to home, working as a teacher in our same town. Her rebellions were cosmetic, surface-level statements that never truly threatened the family structure. As for me, I excelled academically from an early age. My straight A's were expected, not celebrated. When I brought home perfect report cards, my father would nod briskly and ask, "What about next semester?" When I won the state business competition in 9th grade, his first comment wasn't congratulations, but "Judge Williams had some valid points about your risk assessment section." My early entrepreneurial ventures were dismissed as playing store. At 12, I developed a neighborhood pet sitting service with scheduled walks, feeding charts, and progress reports that expanded to cover 3 neighborhoods by the time I was 14. My father called it a cute little hobby, even as I saved enough to buy my first laptop without asking for family money. The pivotal moment came during my junior year of high school. I developed a business plan for a digital platform that would modernize insurance claims processing, ironically, something that could have revolutionized our family business. My plan won national recognition, with venture capitalists expressing interest in development funding after I graduated college. I brought the trophy and certificate home, excited to show how I could blend the Bailey tradition with modern innovation. Instead of pride, my father's face clouded with disapproval. "This tech nonsense is a bubble waiting to burst," he said, barely glancing at my achievement. "Real business is done face-to-face, not through screens and algorithms." That night, we had our first major argument about my future. Stanford has one of the best computer science programs in the country, I insisted, clutching the admissions packet I'd received that morning. And their business innovation track is exactly what I want to study. Bailey Insurance needs marketing graduates and actuaries, not coders, my father countered, his voice rising. Your great-grandfather built something that has supported this family for generations. You want to throw that away for some Silicon Valley fantasy? I'm not throwing anything away, I argued. I'm building something new, something that could take the Bailey name into the future. The future, he scoffed, turning away. The Bailey name stands for reliability, not chasing trends. I went to bed that night realizing that my vision for my future and my father's were irreconcilable. Something would have to give, and I was determined it wouldn't be my dreams. The summer before college became a cold war in the Bailey household. My choice of Stanford over my father's alma mater, Penn State, was treated as a preliminary betrayal. The selection of computer science and business innovation as my majors rather than traditional business administration deepened the rift. Each choice I made that diverged from the established Bailey path was met with increasing chill from my father. My mother tried to play peacemaker. Stanford is an excellent school, Robert, she ventured during one particularly tense dinner. Morgan's scholarships show they really value her talents. Plenty of good local schools would have valued her too, he replied without looking up from his plate. Schools where she could focus on practical business skills instead of California dreaming. That summer, I interned at a tech startup in Philadelphia instead of at Bailey Insurance. While Ethan spent his days learning the family client roster and playing golf with longtime customers, I immersed myself in coding, digital marketing, and venture capital presentations. I came home excited about new possibilities, only to face my father's dismissive comments. Another day playing with computers, he would ask as I entered the house, making it clear that in his eyes, my work wasn't real business experience. The final confrontation came 3 days before I was scheduled to leave for California. My father called a family meeting, a formal affair held in the living room with everyone present. He sat in his leather armchair, the position of authority from which all Bailey decisions were announced. Morgan, he began with a formality that sent warning signals through me. I've given this considerable thought. Your college choices. Unorthodox, but the Bailey family has always valued education. What happens after graduation is my concern. He leaned forward, hands clasped between his knees. I'm prepared to support your studies at Stanford under one condition. Upon graduation, you return to Pennsylvania and join the family business. For years is plenty of time to get this tech fascination out of your system. The room fell silent. My mother studied her hands. Ethan wore a satisfied smirk. Amanda looked between us with wide eyes. That's not going to happen, I said finally, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I'm not coming back to sell insurance policies using methods that haven't changed since the 1980s. Then you're choosing your path over your family, he stated, rising from his chair to indicate the discussion was closed. Don't expect Bailey resources to support choices that undermine Bailey traditions. Our last dinner before I left was a masterclass in frigid civility. As I prepared to leave the next morning, my father shook my hand formally at the door. When this California adventure fails, and it wouldn't expect to walk back into a position here. Opportunities go to those who demonstrate loyalty. Those were the last words my father spoke directly to me for nearly a decade. My early years in Silicon Valley were challenging. I lived in a tiny apartment with 3 roommates, worked part-time jobs while maintaining a full course load, and spent every spare minute building skills and connections. My first startup attempt after graduation, a peer-to-peer rental insurance platform, failed after 18 months, teaching me painful but valuable lessons about scaling, investor relations, and market timing. Through it all, communication with my family dwindled to occasional formalities. Holiday calls became increasingly brief and strained. My mother would call secretly sometimes, her voice hushed even though my father was at work. "I just want to know you're eating properly," she would say, though we both knew she wanted to hear about my life, but feared showing too much interest. She never mentioned my career directly, as though doing so would be taking sides against my father. Ethan's rare communications were dismissive. "Still playing with your apps out there?" he messaged one Christmas. "Dad, just made me senior partner. Real work with real people, you should try it sometime." Amanda provided occasional family updates, births, marriages, illnesses with cautious neutrality. "Not taking sides," she would text. "Just keeping you in the loop." 10 years passed this way as I gradually built my reputation in the tech industry. After my first startup failure, I joined an established fintech company, rising through positions of increasing responsibility. I developed expertise in modernizing traditional financial services through technology, ironically becoming an expert in exactly what our family business had needed. The unexpected breakthrough came on a Tuesday afternoon. A headhunter contacted me about an executive position at a major corporation looking for someone with my exact experience profile. The interviews progressed rapidly, each round moving me closer to the C-suite position. It was during the final interview that I discovered a stunning coincidence. The company was Reynolds Enterprise, the same firm where my father had worked his entire career. The moral dilemma hit immediately. Should I withdraw to avoid the awkwardness? Would it seem like I was deliberately seeking this position to prove something? After careful consideration, I decided to proceed. My qualifications had earned me this opportunity, not family connections. If anything, my family situation would make the position more challenging, not less. When the offer came for the CEO position, I accepted based on the merits of the role and my qualifications, not because of or in spite of me father's connection to the company. The cream-colored envelope arrived at my San Francisco apartment on a foggy March morning. The elegant script addressed to Ms. Morgan Bailey contained an invitation to my grandmother Eleanor's 80th birthday celebration, a full family reunion at the Old Bailey property in rural Pennsylvania. I stood in my kitchen, coffee growing cold, staring at the card. 10 years had passed since I'd seen most of my family in person. 10 years of building a life and career completely separate from the Bailey legacy. In 2 weeks, I would be publicly announced as the new CEO of Reynolds Enterprise, but the announcement hadn't been made yet. The timing was either cosmic irony or perfect dramatic staging. "You're not seriously considering going, are you?" asked my best friend Jasmine when I called her that evening. "These are the same people who basically cut you off for having ambition." "My grandmother always supported me," I replied, tracing the embossed border of the invitation. "She sent me birthday cards every year, even when everyone else stopped. And she's turning 80. So send a nice gift and a card," Jasmine countered. "You don't need to walk into the lion's den." "Maybe I need to face them," I said slowly, surprising myself with the realization. Not to prove anything, but to close that chapter properly. I've spent 10 years building something I'm proud of. Maybe it's time to stand in front of them as the person I've become, not the daughter who disappointed them. After considerable thought, I RSVP'd affirmatively, deciding to drive out for the Saturday celebration and return Sunday a brief appearance to honor my grandmother without extending my exposure to family tension. Preparing for the reunion consumed more mental energy than my CEO transition planning. I deliberated over my outfit, finally selecting a simple navy blue dress that projected professionalism without seeming flashy or superior. I practiced responses to the inevitable questions about my personal life. No, not married. No, no children. Yes, very fulfilled in my career. I rehearsed calm reactions to potential barbs about abandoning family traditions or California values. Most importantly, I decided not to reveal my new position until the company made its official announcement the following week. This wasn't about dramatic reveals or proving points. It was about respecting my grandmother on her special day. The drive to Pennsylvania took me through increasingly familiar landscapes. As city gave way to suburbs and then to rolling countryside, memories flooded back: summer picnics, school field trips, the gradual narrowing of horizons that had once felt so suffocating. The Bailey property appeared around a bend in the road, 20 acres centered around the Victorian farmhouse my great-great-grandfather had built after founding the insurance agency. Cars lined the long gravel driveway, and colorful balloons marked the entrance. I parked my rental car at the far end, took a deep breath, and stepped out into the warm spring afternoon. My first encounters with extended family members produced a range of reactions. Cousin Patrick's wife, Jennifer, did a double take before offering a tentative smile. "Morgan? Is that really you? We weren't sure you'd come." Uncle Jim pumped my hand enthusiastically. "The California girl returns. How's the weather out there in La La Land?" His jovial tone didn't quite reach his eyes, which assessed my clothes, my car, my demeanor with calculation. Aunt Susan cornered me by the punch bowl, diamond rings flashing as she patted my arm. "Still single, I hear? Well, career women often find love later. Though you're what now, 33? Tick-tock." She laughed as though she'd said something helpful rather than insulting. Cousins I'd grown up with now had spouses and children in tow. Some seemed genuinely interested in my life, while others made comments thinly veiling competitiveness. Must be nice to only worry about yourself, and some of us chose family over ambition, floated my way between superficial smiles. I was studying the elaborate birthday cake when my sister Amanda appeared at my elbow. "You came," she said, surprise and something like relief in her voice. She'd changed little in the past decade, same heart-shaped face, though her once purple hair was now a natural brown styled in a practical bob. "For Grandma," I confirmed, accepting her hesitant hug. "How are you, Mandy?" "Good. Teaching 3rd grade now. Married Brian 4 years ago. You got the wedding invitation, right?" She glanced around nervously. "Look, Morgan, Dad's in a mood today. He didn't know you were coming until he saw your name on Grandma's guest list update. Just be prepared, okay?" Before I could ask what she meant, a familiar voice called out, "Amanda, your son is climbing the maple tree again." My mother hurried toward us, stopping short when she saw me. "Morgan," she said softly, years of unspoken words passing between us. She looked older, more lined around the eyes, her blonde hair now streaked with silver. "You're here." "Hi, Mom," I replied, accepting her tentative embrace. Her perfume was the same lilacs and vanilla, instantly transporting me back to childhood. "You look well," she offered, eyes scanning my face. "Successful." "I am," I confirmed, not elaborating. "It's good to see you." The awkward moment stretched until she patted my arm and murmured, I should help with the grandchildren, before hurrying away. I glimpsed my brother Ethan across the lawn, pretending not to notice me while pointing me out to his wife. My father was notably absent from the gathering front yard, though Amanda informed me he was inside, helping Grandma Eleanor prepare for her entrance. As guests began moving, I found a seat at a table near the back of the tent, positioned for a quick exit if needed. As family members filled in around me, I maintained pleasant small talk while watching the entrance for my first glimpse of my father in a decade. The tent buzzed with conversation as my extended family settled into their seats. Circular tables draped in white linen filled the space, each centered with spring flower arrangements and framed photos of my grandmother at various life stages. At the front, a long rectangular table awaited the immediate family grandparents, parents, siblings, and their spouses. I remained at my back table, exchanging pleasantries with distant cousins who seemed unsure how to treat me. From this vantage point, I watched my father enter the tent. Robert Bailey at 63 looked much as he had at 53, tall and straight-backed, his dark hair now fully gray but still thick, his movements deliberate and controlled. He scanned the room as he walked, his gaze passing over me without pause, whether intentionally or because he didn't recognize me, I couldn't tell. My brother Ethan followed, now sporting the confident swagger of a man who believed he'd fulfilled his destiny. He guided his wife Tracy and their 2 young sons to the family table, occasionally nodding acknowledgement to guests. Unlike my father, he made no pretense of not seeing May's gaze fixed directly on me for a moment, his expression a mixture of surprise and something like resentment before he deliberately turned away. Grandmother Eleanor made her entrance on my grandfather Thomas's arm, her silver hair elegantly styled, her smile radiant as everyone rose to applaud. At 80, she remained the family matriarch, the gentle but firm center around which the Bailey clan revolved. Even my father softened visibly in her presence. After everyone was seated and the first course served, my grandfather stood to toast his wife of 58 years. His warm words about partnership, resilience, and family legacy brought tears to many eyes. Grandmother Eleanor's response was brief but heartfelt, thanking everyone for gathering and expressing her joy at seeing all my beloved family together again. Her gaze found me across the room, her smile widening slightly in acknowledgement. As dessert was being served, my father unexpectedly rose from his seat, tapping his water glass for attention. The tent gradually quieted as everyone turned toward him. Thank you all for coming today to celebrate my mother's extraordinary life and contribution to our family, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the space. As Eleanor's oldest son, I've had the privilege of witnessing her dedication to family values and traditions longer than anyone here except my father. He spoke at length about family loyalty, the Bailey legacy, and the importance of honoring one's roots. The speech seemed benign if somewhat pointed, and I began to relax slightly, thinking perhaps Amanda had overstated his mood. Then his tone shifted. Family isn't just about shared blood or names, he continued, his voice hardening slightly. It's about shared values and commitment to each other above personal gain or individual whims. My stomach tightened as I sensed where this was heading. Most of you know that the Bailey family has maintained certain traditions for generations. We build rather than abandon. We support rather than undermine. We stay rather than stray. The tent had grown uncomfortably quiet. The clink of silverware ceased entirely. His gaze fixed directly on me for the first time, and the weight of 60 pairs of eyes followed, turning toward my table. 10 years ago, my daughter Morgan chose to abandon our family business, our traditions, and our values for the allure of Silicon Valley. She made it abundantly clear that her personal ambitions meant more to her than 4 generations of Bailey history. Murmurs rippled through the tent. My face burned, but I kept my expression neutral, my posture straight. I had hoped that time and maturity might bring perspective, he continued, but her presence here today after a decade of absence feels less like reconciliation and more like curiosity or perhaps tourism to a world she deliberately left behind. My grandmother's face had gone pale, her hand gripping my grandfather's arm. My mother stared fixedly at her plate. Ethan wore an expression of grim satisfaction, while Amanda looked stricken. So let me be clear, since actions apparently weren't clear enough, my father's voice rose slightly. As of today, I no longer consider her my daughter. The Bailey family business and legacy will continue through those who've proven their loyalty and commitment. He raised his glass toward Ethan. To family, real family, and to values that stand the test of time rather than chasing the next trend. The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved to drink to his toast. My grandmother's hand had risen to cover her mouth. Several aunts exchanged alarmed glances. Even Ethan looked somewhat discomfited by the public nature of the declaration. In that frozen moment, I felt a strange sense of clarity washing over me. The hurt was there deep and undeniable, but alongside it came an unexpected sense of release. For 10 years, I'd carried the weight of being the family disappointment, the cautionary tale, the one who'd strayed. Now, with his public disowning, my father had inadvertently set me free from any lingering obligation or guilt. My first instinct was to stand up, walk out with dignity, and never look back. The rental car keys felt heavy in my pocket, the exit tantalizingly close. This wasn't my world anymore, perhaps it never truly had been. But as I looked at my grandmother's distressed face, something shifted inside me. I hadn't come here to win my father's approval or to rejoin the Bailey fold. I'd come to honor my grandmother and to stand in my truth. Walking out now would only reinforce the narrative my father had constructed that I was a deserter, someone who abandoned family when things got difficult. With deliberate movements, I pushed back my chair and stood. The scrape of wood against floor echoed in the silence. Shoulders back, chin lifted, I began walking not toward the exit, but toward the front of the tent. Every step toward the front of the tent felt both eternal and inevitable. Faces turned to follow my progress, some sympathetic, others uncomfortable, a few openly curious about how this family drama would play out. I kept my gaze steady, focused on the path ahead rather than the reactions around me. As I reached the small clearing near the family table, my father's expression hardened into something between defiance and dismissal. He remained standing, clearly unwilling to cede the physical advantage of height in this confrontation. I didn't come here to disrupt Grandma Eleanor's celebration. I began, my voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through me. I came because family does matter to me, though perhaps we define it differently. I turned slightly to address the broader gathering rather than just my father. For the record, I never rejected the Bailey values of integrity, service, and hard work. I simply believed those values could thrive in new environments and adapt to changing times. My father's scoff was audible, but I built my career on the foundation of what I learned growing up in this family. The determination, the attention to detail, the commitment to excellence, those are Bailey traits I carry proudly, even if I apply them differently than previous generations. I was about to continue when movement at the tent entrance caught my attention. A tall, distinguished man with silver hair and an expensive suit paused at the threshold, seeming to assess whether he was interrupting a private moment. William Reynolds, CEO of Reynolds Enterprise, me future predecessor, and my father's boss for the past 25 years. Seeing me, his face broke into a warm smile as he strode forward, hand extended. "Morgan, what a delightful surprise," he exclaimed, seemingly oblivious to the tension permeating the tent. "When you mentioned a family commitment this weekend, I had no idea I'd be attending the same gathering." Confused murmurs rippled through the audience. My father's expression shifted from righteous indignation to bewilderment. "William," I greeted him with a professional smile, accepting his handshake. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Your grandmother and my wife serve on the hospital board together," he explained cheerfully. "Eleanor has been trying to get me to one of her legendary gatherings for years. Finally made it." He glanced around, noting the strange atmosphere. "Have I interrupted something important?" "Just a family discussion," I replied diplomatically. William nodded, then turned to address the gathering. "Well, while I have everyone's attention, I might steal a moment of your celebration to share some news that I'm sure Robert already knows, but perhaps the rest of you don't." My father's confusion deepened visibly. Clearly, he had no idea what William was about to say. "Reynolds Enterprise has been searching for the right person to lead our company into the next generation," William continued. "After an exhaustive national search, I'm delighted that we found the perfect candidate with exactly the combination of traditional financial services knowledge and innovative technology expertise we need." I closed my eyes briefly, knowing what was coming and powerless to stop it. "I'm looking at our next CEO," William announced proudly, gesturing toward me. "Morgan will be taking the reins next month when I step into retirement. The official announcement goes out Monday, but I couldn't resist sharing the news when I saw her here." The tent erupted in gasps and whispers. My father's face drained of color, his expression transitioning from anger to disbelief in real time. My mother's hand covered her mouth in surprise. Ethan looked as though someone had physically struck him. "Morgan Bailey," William continued, oblivious to the bombshell he dropped, "represents everything we've been looking for: ethical leadership, strategic vision, and a remarkable track record of modernizing traditional business models while maintaining their core values." He turned to my father with a friendly clap on the shoulder. "You must be incredibly proud, Robert." All those years you've dedicated to Reynolds, and now your daughter will be leading the company. Quite the family legacy. The irony was so perfect it almost seemed scripted. My father stood frozen, visibly processing that the daughter he'd just publicly disowned would soon be his boss. William, finally sensing the awkward atmosphere, looked between us with dawning comprehension. I'm sorry, did you not know? I assumed since it's your daughter. But of course, the board proceedings were confidential until the official announcement. Actually, I interjected gently, I've been using Baileychin professionally, which might explain the confusion. This was true. I'd added my maternal grandmother's maiden name years ago to create some separation between my professional achievements and my family name. Oh, he continued innocently, especially her reputation for ethical leadership and family-centered corporate culture. The board was particularly impressed by her insistence that companies should operate with the same integrity and long-term perspective that strong families do. Each word seemed to land like a physical blow to my father's careful narrative about my rejection of family values. Around the tent, relatives exchanged meaningful glances, reassessing the family black sheep in light of this unexpected revelation. I should probably let you get back to your celebration, William said, finally reading the room accurately. Morgan, we can catch up at the office on Monday. Robert, always good to see you. We should have lunch next week to discuss the transition. With a warm smile for my grandmother, he added, Happy birthday, Eleanor. Judith sends her regards before making a tactful exit. In his wake, the tent remained uncomfortably silent. My father, still standing, looked physically diminished. His earlier righteousness collapsed into confusion and what looked remarkably like fear. Without another word, he turned and walked stiffly from the tent. Family members immediately broke into hushed conversations, heads bent together, occasional glances thrown my way. I stood alone in the clearing, the unexpected revelation hanging in the air around me. From the head table, my grandmother slowly rose and made her way toward me, her eyes bright with a mixture of concern and what looked like pride. Morgan, she said softly, taking my hands in hers. It seems we have much to catch up on. As my father's retreating figure disappeared beyond the tent flap, the gathering erupted into a buzz of whispered conversations and not-so-subtle stares in my direction. The once unified Bailey clan fractured visibly into groups, those moving to console my mother, those gravitating toward Ethan and his visible discomfort, those approaching me with suddenly warm smiles, and those huddled in corners, discussing the dramatic turn of events. William Reynolds lingered near the dessert table, slowly becoming aware of the family dynamics he had inadvertently disrupted. He caught my eye across the space and mouthed what looked like sorry with a questioning tilt of his head. I excused myself from my grandmother's gentle grip and walked toward him, professional mask firmly in place despite the emotional tumult beneath. William, I greeted him quietly. I appreciate your kind words, but perhaps we should discuss the timing of announcements another time. His eyes reflected genuine concern. Morgan, I had no idea about the situation with your father. Had I known there was family tension, I never would have. It's fine, I interrupted gently. The announcement was scheduled for Monday regardless. This just accelerated certain conversations. He studied me with newfound respect. Your composure is remarkable. If you manage crises at Reynolds with this same steadiness, I've clearly made the right choice. I appreciate that, I replied. But today is about my grandmother's birthday, not business transitions. Perhaps we could continue this conversation in the office. Of course, he agreed immediately. I'll see myself out and leave you to your family matters. Again, my apologies for the awkward timing. No apology necessary, I assured him. These were conversations that needed to happen eventually. As William departed, I turned. Aunt Susan materialized. Uncle Frank, who had earlier made dismissive comments about city living, now wanted to discuss urban real estate investments. Cousins who had pointedly mentioned their family priorities suddenly found my career choices fascinating. I answered politely but briefly, excusing myself as soon as possible from each conversation. This sudden interest in my life felt less like genuine connection and more like opportunism, realization that saddened me more than my father's rejection had. My grandmother, sit with me, Morgan, she requested. This old woman has missed too many years of your life. As I joined her, she took my hand in hers, her skin paper-thin, but her grip surprisingly strong. I always knew you would make your own path, she said quietly. You have his determination, you know your father's. But you have my mother's vision. She was ahead of her time, too. I never meant to disappoint him, I admitted, the words slipping out before I could censor them. Disappointment is about expectations, not achievements, she replied wisely. Your father expected you to want what he wanted. That's not disappointment, that's a failure of imagination. She squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. Not because of your title, but because you stayed true to yourself even when it was difficult. Our moment was interrupted by my brother Ethan, who approached with barely contained anger simmering beneath his controlled exterior. So that was your plan all along, he said without preamble, voice low but intense. Engineer this whole CEO position to humiliate Dad in front of the entire family. Ethan, grandmother Eleanor warned, but I gently touched her arm. It's okay, I assured her before meeting my brother's accusing gaze. The timing was coincidental, Ethan. I had no idea William would be here or that he would announce anything. Convenient coincidence, he scoffed. 10 years of barely a word, then you show up right before becoming Dad's boss? You expect me to believe that? I expect nothing from you, I replied evenly. I came to celebrate Grandma's birthday, nothing more. The Reynolds board made their decision based on qualifications, not family connections I deliberately minimized by using Bailey Chin professionally. Ethan's jaw worked as he processed this. You could have declined the position once you realized it was Dad's company. Would you have? I challenged gently. If you were offered the perfect role that matched your skills and ambitions, would you turn it down because a distant relative worked there? He's not a distant relative, he's our father. A father who just publicly disowned me before I had any idea about William's presence or announcement, I reminded him. How exactly does that make me the villain in this scenario? Something in Ethan's expression faltered a crack in his certainty. For a brief moment, I glimpsed the little brother who had once built pillow forts with me before our father's expectations had turned us into competitors rather than allies. The agency was supposed to be all of ours, he said finally, a note of genuine hurt beneath his anger. That was the plan, the three of us running it together someday. You were the smart one, the one with the best ideas. Your leaving changed everything. The honesty of this admission caught me off guard. In all our limited communications over the years, Ethan had never once suggested he missed my presence or valued my contributions. I didn't know you felt that way, I said carefully. You seem to thrive being Dad's chosen successor. Being the only option isn't the same as being chosen, he replied, then straightened his shoulders, mask slipping back into place. Doesn't matter now anyway. Enjoy your big corporate office. Some of us still believe in what our family built. He turned and walked away, posture rigid with unresolved emotion. Watching him go, I felt a complex mixture of regret for what might have been and acceptance of what was. Before I could process this encounter, I'm so sorry, she blurted, dropping into the chair beside me. I should have stood up for you. All these years, I should have said something when Dad would dismiss your achievements or when Ethan would make those snide comments. I didn't want to rock the boat. Amanda, I began, but she rushed on. No, let me say this. I was a coward. I stayed in the safe middle ground, never challenging Dad directly but never really supporting you either. And you've done amazing things, Morgan. Things that make our little insurance agency look like a corner lemonade stand compared to what you're doing. I couldn't help but smile at her characteristic exaggeration. The agency has value, Amanda. Different doesn't mean better or worse. Don't be diplomatic, she sniffled. You're going to be a CEO of a major corporation. I teach third graders to multiply and still live 20 minutes from where we grew up. And you're amazing at it, I countered. Your students are lucky to have you. Success isn't measured by titles or geography. She wiped her eyes, studying me. When did you get so wise? Actually, don't answer that. You were always the wise one. She reached for my hand. Can we start over? Not completely, I know we can't erase 10 years, but maybe we could text more than twice a year? Maybe I could come visit you in California sometime. I'd like that, I said sincerely, squeezing her hand. Very much. Our reconnection was interrupted by my mother, who approached hesitantly, her eyes red-rimmed, but her composure intact. Your father is... I'm sure he is, I replied neutrally. He might appreciate a conversation, she suggested. Away from everyone. I considered declining, pointing out that he had been the one to sever our relationship publicly. But looking at my mother's hopeful expression, I realized this wasn't about giving my father what he deserved, it was about giving myself closure. All right, I agreed, rising from my seat. I'll talk to him. As I moved toward the tent exit, I felt strangely calm. Whatever happened next, I was approaching this conversation as Morgan Bailey-Chin, successful in my own right, not as Robert Bailey's disappointing daughter seeking approval. The difference was subtle but profound, and it carried me forward with steady steps toward the confrontation that had been brewing for a decade. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the wraparound porch of the old Victorian farmhouse. My father sat alone on the wooden swing that had hung from the same hooks for 3 generations, staring out at the rolling Pennsylvania countryside. From a distance, he looked smaller somehow, diminished from the towering figure of my childhood memories. He didn't look up as my footsteps sounded on the wooden planks, though the slight stiffening of his shoulders indicated he was aware of my presence. I settled into the wicker chair adjacent to the swing, neither too close nor too distant for conversation. For several minutes, we sat in silence. The distant laughter and conversation from the tent floated across the lawn, a reminder of the celebration continuing without us. You could have told me, he finally said, his voice lacking its usual authoritative edge. About the CEO position? I only accepted it last week. The board required confidentiality until the formal announcement. You could have mentioned you were interviewing at Reynolds. I considered this. Would it have mattered? Would it have changed your opinion of my career choices? He didn't answer directly. 10 years at a company I've dedicated my life to, and they bring in my estranged daughter to lead it. His laugh held no humor. Someone up there has an interesting sense of irony. I was hired because my experience bridges traditional financial services and technological innovation, I explained evenly. Not because of or in spite of any connection to you. He turned to look at me fully for the first time, his expression a complicated mixture of pride, resentment, and something that might have been regret. You look like your mother, he observed, but that determination, that's pure Bailey. Some traits transcend disagreements, I acknowledged. Another silence stretched between us, less tense than the first, but heavy with unspoken words. I built something secure for you, for all of you, he said finally. A business with roots, with community connection, with stability. Silicon Valley startups implode every day. I wanted to protect you from that uncertainty. I understand that now, I replied truthfully. But protection can become limitation when it doesn't allow for growth or change. The agency has grown, he countered defensively. Within parameters you controlled, I pointed out. That works for some people. I worked for Ethan. But I needed different challenges, different measures of success. And now you'll be my boss, he said, the words clearly difficult for him. I'll be the CEO of a company where you're a valued middle manager, I corrected gently. Those are different things. He studied me with new consideration. You've changed. Grown up. 10 years tends to do that, I replied without sarcasm. Your mother missed you, he said abruptly. She kept a file of articles about you, printouts from tech magazines, business journals. Anything that mentioned your name or your company's. This revelation caught me off guard. She never said. She thought it would upset me, he admitted. Maybe she was right. The implications of this that my mother had followed my career in secret, that my father knew about it and had allowed it shifted something in my understanding of the past decade. What happens now? He asked, the question hanging between us. Professionally? Nothing changes immediately. You'll continue in your current role. I'll be working primarily with the executive team to implement the strategic vision the board approved. And personally, I considered this carefully. That depends on what we both want. I'm not the daughter who left 10 years ago, and you're not the father I left behind. We're different people now. I said things today that I can't take back, he acknowledged, eyes returning to the distant landscape. You did, I agreed. And they hurt. But they also clarified things. We can't go back to some idealized family relationship that never really existed. But maybe we can build something new, something based on mutual respect rather than expectations and obligation. Respect, he repeated, testing the word. Not love. Love is complicated, I said carefully. It got tangled up with approval and disappointment in our family. Maybe respect is a clearer foundation to start with. He nodded slowly. I can understand that. Respect is earned on both sides. Yes, I agreed. And it has boundaries. I won't pretend to be someone I'm not, and I won't have to pretend I approve of every decision you make, he countered, a hint of his old stubbornness returning. No, I smiled slightly. Just respect that they're my decisions to make. He extended his hand formally, the gesture so characteristic that it almost made me laugh. I can work with that, professionally and otherwise. I accepted the handshake, noting the familiar calluses and strength in his grip. Not a dramatic reconciliation, not a tearful embrace, but perhaps something more sustainable for who we were now. Your grandmother wants a proper family photo before people start leaving, he said, rising from the swing. We should head back. Walking beside him toward the tent, I felt a curious lightness. Nothing had been fully resolved. Years of hurt and misunderstanding couldn't be erased in one conversation, but something had shifted, creating space for possibility where before there had been only certainty and judgment. In the weeks that followed, that tentative beginning unfolded in small, measured steps. My office at Reynolds Enterprise became a neutral territory where my father and I could interact without the weight of family history. Our first official meeting was awkward but productive, focused on the concrete realities of business rather than the complicated emotions between us. My mother called more frequently, no longer in whispered conversations but open discussions about her life, my work, the weather, normal mother-daughter topics that slowly rebuilt our connection. She visited me in San Francisco 3 months after the reunion, her first trip to see my life there. Watching her explore my neighborhood, meet my friends, and gradually relax into the unfamiliar environment helped heal something in both of us. Amanda and I established a regular Sunday video call that became a highlight of my week. Her perspective is so different from mine, yet delivered with increasing honesty, offered insights into family dynamics I'd missed during my years away. Her son Jaden, now 7, began joining our calls, curious about his cool auntie in California. Ethan remained the most distant, our interactions limited to necessary family communications. But even there, the open hostility had been replaced by a civil, if cool, acknowledgement of our connection. Perhaps that was all we could manage for now, and perhaps that was enough. Sitting in my office 6 months after the reunion, looking out at the San Francisco skyline as evening settled over the city, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The hurt of being rejected, the determination to prove myself, the unexpected intersection of my past and future at my grandmother's birthday, all of it had shaped me in ways I was only beginning to understand. My success hadn't come from rejecting family values, but from translating them into a different context. The work ethic, integrity, and perseverance my father had insisted upon had served me well, even as I applied them to pursuits he hadn't envisioned or approved. The journey of healing with my family wasn't complete, perhaps it never would be entirely. But I had learned that defining success on my own terms didn't have to mean complete separation from my roots. It was possible to honor where I came from while staying true to my own vision, to maintain boundaries while still allowing for connection. As the lights of the city began to sparkle against the darkening sky, I felt a profound sense of peace with my path. Not because everyone now approved or understood, but because I no longer needed that approval to recognize the value of my choices. Sometimes the greatest freedom comes not from having everyone accept your decisions, but from accepting them yourself so completely that others' opinions, while still mattering on a human level, no longer define your sense of worth or purpose. That was the real achievement, far more significant than any title or position. I invite you to share in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own dreams? How did you navigate that difficult path? Remember to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. There's power in knowing we're not alone in these complex family journeys. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to stay true to yourself while keeping your heart open to reconciliation when it's healthy and possible.